أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله الذي كان موجودا قبل حدوث الأشياء ويبقى بعد فناء الأشياء. تفرد بالأولية والقدم وسما كل شيء ما عداه بالفناء والعدم. كما قال عز شأنه: كل شيء هالك إلا وجهه وكل نفس ذائقة الموت. وقال: كل من عليها فان ويبقى وجه ربك ذو الجلال والإكرام. سبحان من لا يخفى عليه اختلاف النيات ولا يعذب عنه معاصي العباد في الخلوات. سبحان الله الذي منه خلقة العباد وإليه المعاد. فمن يعمل مثقال ذرة خيرا يره ومن يعمل مثقال ذرة شرا يره. نشهد أن لا إله إلا هو الملك الذي لا ينازع في ملكه ولا يضاد في حكمه. يعذب من يشاء بما يشاء كيف يشاء ويرحم من يشاء بما يشاء كيف يشاء. تعذيبه المسيئين عدل وعفوه تفضل. ونشهد أن محمدا سيد المرسلين والمنذرين صلى الله عليه وآله الهداة المهديين. من ركب سفينتهم نجا واهتدى ومن تخلف عنها ضل فغرق وهوى. أوصيكم عباد الله بالاعتصام بالتقوى فإنه حبل متين وعروة وثقى. أوصيكم ونفسي بتقوى الله ونظم أمركم. I advise you all and myself to fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to organize our affairs. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. قال أمير المؤمنين علي بن أبي طالب عليه الصلاة والسلام: عظم الخالق في أنفسهم فصغر ما دونه في أعينهم. فهم والجنة كمن قد رآه فهم فيها معنمون وهم والنار كمن قد رآه فهم فيها معذبون. This is again the verse from the Sermon of Muttaqeen that we were discussing from the past few weeks. And we have reached this phrase where Imam Ali again notifies us of another great virtue of God-fearing people, the people who are pious, the people who fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Imam puts up all these virtues in front of us in order for us to practice according to what Imam Ali is saying. Now, this is again very important and a magnificent quality of such God-fearing people. Imam says, عَظُمَ الْخَالِقُ فِي أَنفُسِهِمْ. Now, I hope you are following all those traits and all those virtues which we discussed last week. And we discussed that these people who are God-fearing people, they fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and also they have hope. شَوْقًا وَخَوْفًا. Now, this is the continuation. If you have that shawq and if you have that khawf, if you have that hope and you have that fear, this is what is going to happen. عَظُمَ الْخَالِقُ فِي أَنفُسِهِمْ. Their Lord and their Creator is going to have a seat in their hearts of greatness. The greatness of the Creator is seated in their hearts. And فَصَغُرَ مَا دُونَهُ فِي أَعْيُنِهِمْ. And the rest of the things other than God, anything that exists in this world, is smaller in their eyes. So they put Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at the top, and the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is evident for them, but rest everything other than Allah, مَا دُونَهُ فِي أَعْيُنِهِمْ صَغُرًا. The rest of the things are small. Now this quality of God-fearing people is supposed to be within us, the lovers of Ahlul Bayt, the lovers of the followers of Imam Ali alayhi salatu wasalam. That once we achieve this fear and hope in our souls, we must know that we have to have this quality of عَظُمَ خَالِقُ فِي أَنفُسِهِمْ. We have to have this quality that the greatness of the Creator should be seated in our hearts and our souls and our minds. Greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the rest other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, everything is small in our eyes. Now what is going to happen? What is going to happen after we achieve such a level that only Allah is great in our eyes? Only Allah, the Exalted, is great in our eyes. What is going to happen? Now, once a person stands for praying, and what do you say? How do you start your prayer? You stand and you say, Takbiratul Ihram. What do you say? Allahu Akbar. Now, this Allahu Akbar is going to mean something only when you have seated the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in your hearts. Only when you know that only Allah is great and nothing else is greater than Him. That is when this namaz, this salat, this prayer is going to become mi'rajul mu'min. You have to manifest your beliefs in your actions, isn't it? You have to show these beliefs that you really believe in them. Once you say Allahu Akbar, you simply just cannot walk into the mosque and say Allahu Akbar without any intention, without any belief supporting your statement. This is your belief. عَظُمَ الْخَالِقُ فِي أَنفُسِهِمْ. They have seated their Creator in their hearts with greatness. عَظُمَ الْخَالِقُ. Nothing else is azim. Nothing else is bigger than their Lord. Now once this happens, once this manifestation happens, and you are really believing in this, that Allahu Akbar is the term that you use in your prayers, that you use, that is your slogan. Yes, that is your slogan. That is your, your symbol of being a Muslim. You say Allahu Akbar. You say God is great. How come He is great? You have to believe that everything else other than God is small. In your eyes, it has to be like this. It cannot be that you believe in something else and then you say something else. No, once you stand for prayer and you say Allahu Akbar, you have to believe that Allah is the great. Now what happens next is that once you believe in this, then gradually your prayers becomes mi'raj. That is when you are elevated. That is when you achieve that proximity to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is what Imam Ali ﷺ is talking about, that God-fearing people, these people who are pious, they have this quality, that عَظُمَ الْخَالِقُ فِي أَنفُسِهِمْ فَصَغُرَ مَا دُونَهُ فِي أَعْيُنِهِمْ. The rest of the things other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is small in their eyes. Now again, something very important. Let me give you an example, my young audience here. When you say, you're looking at this mosque, right? You're looking at this hall in the mosque. You might say that this mosque is big. Yeah, you might come to this conclusion that this mosque is big. How can you conclude that this mosque is big? Give it a thought. When do you say that this mosque is big? When you have a mosque in your mind which is smaller than this mosque. Yeah, because you're comparing it. Or you might say, okay, this mosque is big. It is big enough to accommodate 100 people, 150 people, yes? Because you are comparing it with something. If you don't compare it with anything else, you cannot say that this is big. Or opposite to this, you say this mosque is small. Yeah, you might have visited the mosque of Gauhar Shad in Mashhad. Maybe you have seen the mosque of Jamkaran in Qom. Maybe you have seen the mosque of Sahla or Kufa in Iraq, in Najaf. You might say this mosque is small. Why are you saying this is small? Because you have a mosque bigger than this mosque in your mind. Yes, you are comparing it. So once you say that this mosque is big, that means you are comparing this mosque to a mosque that you might have visited in a village which was small. Now, not exactly like this, but something like this. When you say Allahu Akbar, related, my dear friends, when you say Allahu Akbar, God is great, the exalted. He is great, He is big, He is the one who is supposed to be big. He is worthy of such praise. Then you must admit that other than God, everything is small. Unless you don't believe this, that means you are uttering something that you don't believe in. Yes, everything that you say must have a firm and a sound faith behind it. If you don't have this faith, this is what Imam Ali ﷺ is inviting us towards. Imam is saying you should have this faith, that you must believe in this faith. You must say Allahu Akbar. Now, once you say Allahu Akbar, subhanallah, this is something amazing. Pay close attention to this. Once you say Allahu Akbar, everything becomes small in your eyes. Related to the discussion we had last week. Once you say Allahu Akbar, everything else becomes small in your eyes. Now, are you afraid of small things? Will you be afraid of small things? No, you will never be afraid. No small thing can intimidate you, can inflict fear in your hearts. It is only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who is worthy of being afraid of. You have to be afraid of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then if you really believe in the phrase Allahu Akbar, you will not be afraid of anything else other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You will not be afraid of anything. Nothing can intimidate you in this world. You will be only. So therefore, once we say Allahu Akbar, we mean it. We mean it by our heart and by our soul, by our mind, that only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is worthy of worship. Only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is worthy of submission to Him. Only it is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the exalted, who is worthy of praising, who is worthy to submit ourselves to Him. Nothing else. You don't bow down to anyone else in the state of ruku or sujood. It is only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is what Imam Ali alayhi salatu wasalam is saying, that عَظُمَ الْخَالِقُ, and this is one of the most important qualities of the pious, that they do not لَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. They are not afraid of anyone else. وَلَا خَوْفٌ, they don't have any sort of any fear. وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ, nor they have any grief in their hearts. Why? They don't have grief of these worldly things, because it is only Allahu Akbar. Because it is only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Any hardship, any test, any calamity falls upon a mu'min in this world, you will see him praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Someone close to him, when he dies, he says, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. He loses some loved one, he says, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Al khayru fima baqa. I have the state of itminan. How come you can achieve this state of itminan unless and until you don't believe that Allahu Akbar, Allah is the great. This is what Imam Ali ﷺ is explaining. Now, once we believe in this is again what I want to say, very amazing. Once we believe in this, that there is nothing greater than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Once we have this true belief, firm belief, that we are not afraid of anything, only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because everything else is in my eyes. فَصَغُرَ مَا دُونَهُ فِي أَعْيُنِهِمْ. Everything else other than Allah is small in our eyes. If it is small, we are not afraid of it. Now, once this happens, once a mu'min achieves this status, what happens? This is the time of ibadatul ahrar, which Imam Ali ﷺ says, that there are people who worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and they pray to Him, they worship to Him as liberated people, people of independence, people who have liberated themselves from the shackles of this world, from the chains of these worldly affairs, worldly desires. Yes, so this is how Imam Ali ﷺ is saying that you can be free when you really believe Allahu Akbar, when you really believe that عَظُمَ الْخَالِقُ فِي أَنفُسِهِمْ, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the greatest in our souls, in our minds. We believe it with our soul. So if we start believing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the only one who is great, that is when we become free. This is the thought that Imam Ali ﷺ has given us. Ibadah, worshipping, submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yes, you can be a servant to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and at the same time, you can be free and liberated of any other service to anyone else. You don't have to pay any service to anyone else if you are obeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is what Imam Ali ﷺ explains, and it is a beautiful thing to ponder and to reflect upon, and to think for ourselves that are we really standing somewhere close to these thoughts, somewhere close to these ideas, that are we really afraid of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or are we worshipping other things? No one is worthy of praising other than Allah being praised other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, a question arises, when we see the infallibles, ma'asumeen alayhi salatu wassalam, they are being, they are showing their fear towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What type of fear is this? What type of fear is this? When you see Amirul Mu'mineen, the commander of the faithful, the one who is never afraid, you will never see Amirul Mu'mineen alayhi salatu wasalam in any of the battlefields that he might have shivered or trembled in the face of enemy. No, never. Never. He is who? He is Asadullah al-Ghalib. He is the lion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He cannot tremble, he cannot shiver. Now when you see Amirul Mu'mineen, when he comes close to the mihrab and he stands for the prayer of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, stands in the presence of his Lord, he shivers and he trembles. Why? Why is he shivering? Why is he trembling? What is this fear? This is the fear of the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. عَظُمَ الْخَالِقُ فِي أَنفُسِهِ. He believes that there is nothing greater to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. عَظُمَ الْخَالِقُ فِي أَنفُسِهِ. Allah is the greater. He has seated Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in his heart. The greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is seated in his heart. وَصَغَرُ مَا دُونَهُ and everything else is small in my eyes, in the eyes of Amir al-Mu'minin, in the eyes of the pious people. Now when you see Imam Hassan alayhi salatu wasalam, when he goes to perform his ablution, his wudu, the color of his face turns yellow out of fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why? Is this a fear of, getting punished? Is this the fear of, God forbid, the sins? No, they are infallibles. They are ma'asum. They do not commit sins. But what are they fearing? When you see Lady Zahra salamun alayha standing in mihrab on her musalla, trying to pray in the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, she's shivering. Her feet are trembling. This is there in the history. Why is she shivering and trembling? It is out of the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now this fear is the fear of greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the fear of greatness. Now you might ask, how do we come to this quality? How do we achieve this quality? This is a great quality which Amir al-Mu'minin alayhi salatu wasalam talks about. How do we achieve it? How do we think upon, how do we get to this quality of fearing Allah and seating the greatness of Allah in our hearts? Imam alayhi salatu wasalam, the fifth Imam, he says, إِيَّاكُمْ وَالتَّفَكُّرُوا فِي اللَّهِ وَلَكِنْ إِذَا أَرَدْتُمْ أَن تَنظُرُوا إِلَىٰ عَظَمَتِهِ فَانظُرُوا إِلَىٰ عَظِيمِ خَلْقِهِ. If you want to understand Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if you want to understand His majesty, if you want to understand how great He is, إِيَّاكُمْ وَالتَّفَكُّرُوا فِي اللَّهِ, beware of pondering upon the very essence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You cannot ponder. You cannot think of the essence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No, it is not for you. It is not for me and you, to think on the essence, on the wujud, the kun of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No, we cannot. Then what do we do? وَلَكِنْ إِذَا أَرَدْتُمْ أَن تَنظُرُوا إِلَىٰ عَظَمَتِهِ. But if you really want to look at His greatness, أَن تَنظُرُوا إِلَىٰ عَظَمَتِهِ فَانظُرُوا إِلَىٰ عَظِيمِ خَلْقِهِ. Look at His greater creations. This is the way. This is how you achieve the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is how you understand the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, by looking at the greatness of His creations. Now, again, a second question. These are leading questions. Now, okay, we will look at the creation, the greatness of the creation. Which creation do I look to? The sun is the creation. The moon is the creation. The sunlight, the oceans, the depth of the oceans, the universe, the cosmos. What do I look at? The mountains, the earth, the human being, the lifestyle. What do I look at in order to understand the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? This is a question that you might ask. Now, to understand عَظِيمِ خَلْقِهِ, to look at the greater creations of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who could be more greater than the Holy Prophet himself as the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and who could be greater than the infallible, the 14 ma'asumin. Now, in order to understand the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you are advised to look at the greatness of the 14 infallibles, the ma'asumin alayhi salatu wasalam. Look at their because they are the only image, the tajalli, the manifestation of His attributes in this world. They are here to take us to the Khaliq, to the Creator. Therefore, you look at them and then you understand who your Lord is. That is what Imam Ali ﷺ says. If it was not for us, Allah would not have been worshipped in its true manner. If it was not for the Ahl Bayt ﷺ, no one would have understood who their Lord is. This is what these ahadith and these riwayat say. Now, there are so many other riwayats and ayats. Even this ayah, it is a very important ayah. You might go and look it up and understand. I will not go into the details. سَنُرِيهِمْ فِي آيَاتِنَا سَنُرِيهِمْ آيَاتِنَا فِي الْآفَاقِ وَفِي أَنفُسِهِمْ حَتَّى يَتَبَيَّنَ لَهُ أَنَّهُ الْحَقُّ. Indeed, surely, very soon we will show them our signs in the cosmos and in their souls, in their selves. Then they will understand that أَنَّهُ الْحَقُّ, that He is true. He is the truth. They will understand what the truth is. Now, these ayats and these riwayats are many to quote here, but I will just conclude my first sermon here. There were so many other narrations, but a person must understand that who he is, what is his position in this creation. And once you hear this phrase of Amir al-Mu'minin saying, عَظُمَ الْخَالِقُ فِي أَنفُسِهِمْ, these God-fearing people, have seated the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in their hearts, you must understand how to find this greatness. And the only way to find this greatness is through these 14 infallibles. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. إن أحسن الحديث وأبلغ الموعظة كتاب الله. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إنا أعطيناك الكوثر فصل لربك وانحر إن شانئك هو الأبتر. صدق الله العلي العظيم. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا ونبينا وشفيع المذنبين أبي القاسم مصطفى محمد وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين، لا سيما بقية الله الأعظم روحي وأرواح العالمين لمقدم ترابه الفداء. أوصيكم ونفسي بتقوى الله ونظم أمركم. I again advise all of you and myself to fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to organize our affairs. In the second part of the sermon, I would like to attend and to answer a few questions that were raised during these past weeks, which was again related to different cultures and different festivals. Now we all know that we are living in a very diverse society, where we are in a multicultural, multi-religious society, and we are in a country where you find different religions. Your friends might be of different religion, your neighbors might be of different religions, and they might be celebrating their own festivals. Now the question comes here for all of us, that are we supposed to attend, or are we supposed to celebrate their festivals, or can we do it? This is something that it has been widely questioned and asked, and the jurists, they have also given their verdicts on this. I would just quickly read out the question and answer that is there on the site of Ayatollah Sistani, where the question is it permissible to send the disbelievers seasonal greetings? Is it allowed for me to wish the disbelievers, the non-believers, to wish them on their festivals, or wish them on their the occasions that they celebrate? Is it okay for me to tell them Merry Christmas? Is it okay for me to tell them Happy New Year? Is it okay for me to tell them Happy Diwali, or whatever they are celebrating? So the answer is, there is no harm in greeting them on their occasions. So you can greet them on their occasions. First thing. Second, also you will find this in Ayatollah Sistani's book, which is a code of practice for the Westerners. He says a Muslim is allowed to take a non-Muslim as friends, to be sincere towards him and they be sincere towards him, to help one another in fulfilling the needs of his life. Almighty God, then he quotes an ayah. I will just go through it, and he says that it is permissible to greet Ahlul Kitab, the Jews and the Christians, etc., and also non-Ahlul Kitab. Therefore, you might place non-Ahlul Kitab as the Hindus or the Buddhists or the Jains or whatever religions. Non-Ahlul Kitab on the occasions that they celebrate, like the New Year, Christmas, Easter, Passover, and the rest of the celebrations. Now you are allowed to you are allowed to wish them. You are allowed to greet them on such occasions. The second question is that, am I allowed to celebrate these occasions? There is a difference now. Once you are asking, can I greet them? This is a question. You might have an employee, or you might have a colleague in your office, in your work of place, might be a Christian, might be a Hindu. Can you greet them on that day? Can you tell them? And it is something socializing, yeah? You need to socialize. You are living in a society where you have friends of different religions. So it would be rude that it is the Christmas Eve or the Christmas day, and you might not, wish them. So Islam allows you to wish them, Islam allows you to tell them Merry Christmas or Happy New Year or whatever, but there is a difference between greeting them and celebrating them. Now, coming to the part where is it allowed to celebrate. Now, if keeping the Christmas tree, how do you celebrate? You keep a Christmas tree in your house, or maybe you use those lights which are specifically used on such occasions in your house, in your shop, in your office area, or maybe you want to attend their parties, their gatherings where they have these feasts and all. This is all how you celebrate someone's festival. Is it allowed, or you might give them gifts, or you might receive some gifts on such occasions? Is it allowed? The only clause here to consider and to keep in mind is that it should not be considered preaching or confirming their faith. Yes, if you are celebrating in a manner that it is not considered as preaching their faith, preaching their religion, or confirming their faith or religion, and neglecting your own faith and religion, then it is allowed. But if it is, if you are doing it in a way or in urf, known amongst the people, is that if you put a tree, you are considered to be a Christian, or if you put up such lightings, that means you're supporting their faith, then it might not be allowed, it might not be permissible. But if it is not considered as preaching or confirming their faith, it is not haram to do so. One more thing, attending gatherings where there are sinful acts, attending gatherings where there are sinful acts, which is majalisul ma'asiyah, which is attending gatherings where there are things which are forbidden for a Muslim to do. For example, you are receiving a bottle of wine on the day of Christmas. Yeah, someone might come and gift it to you that you are receiving. It is not allowed for you to receive such gifts. Yes, you might receive a box of chocolate, you might have it. But if you are receiving something which is impermissible, which is haram for you to have or for you to possess, then you have to reject it. You cannot receive it, or you cannot also gift it. Pork, for example, serving alcohol in a party, having mixed gatherings, there is dance, there is music which is impermissible, which is not allowed for a mu'min or a Muslim. You cannot attend such parties and such gatherings where you will be posed to threat of performing any sin. Now, of course, there is a clear fatwa. I was searching and I was saying that can I celebrate Christmas? Yes, if you are celebrating the birthday of Prophet Isa, the Jesus, it is in fact a good thing. You can celebrate. It is recommended if you want to celebrate. We celebrate the birthday of our beloved Prophet. You can also celebrate the birthday of Prophet Isa. Yeah, you can celebrate it. There is no harm. Although there is no specific date that we know that this was the date that he was born on, but you can still celebrate. But keeping in mind that you do not cross those limits which are mentioned in Sharia for you. One very important point that I will very quickly mention here, and then I will end it, that sometimes there is a hadith of Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wasalam. Imam says, and remember, I'm not quoting this hadith in relation to this issue specifically. No, it is you can relate it to many other occasions also. Imam says, Man wada'a nafsahu mawadi' at-tuhma fala yalumanna man asa'a bihi adh-dhann. One who places himself in a position of suspicion, he should not blame those who think ill of him. You understand? If you are placing yourself somewhere where you will be, people will have suspicions, people will, think bad of you. You are, you might be going into a bar to guide someone, but if people look at you, they might think ill of you. Then don't blame them, because they saw you coming out of a bar, they saw you coming out of a casino, so they saw you coming out of a some place there where a moment shouldn't be. So Imam Ali salatu wasalam says that man wada'a nafsuhu fi mawadi' at-tuhma, if you are placing yourself in a position of suspicion, then don't blame others of thinking ill of you. So you must refrain from such gatherings, such places where you will be suspected of doing something ill, doing something, immoral, or committing a crime or a sin against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Therefore, this is important. Now, why am I saying this? Sometimes we are living in a multicultural and a multi-religious societies. We tend to, join our friends in their gatherings, and we again come up with excuses. Maulana, he's my friend. We are classmates. We are, colleagues. We are this. We are that. I have to go there. If I'm inviting him on our occasions, I will have to go and visit them on their holy Diwali, Navaratri, whatever celebrations they are having. But you have to understand, if you are a mu'min and you have especially those who have responsibilities in their society, especially an alim or a scholar or a leader or someone who has a position. If you are placing yourself somewhere suspicious, then don't blame others to talk ill of you. Yes, so it's better to refrain from such positions. It's better to refrain from such gatherings. It might some things are, in case of jurisprudence, it might be jaiz, it might be halal, but once you look at it from the point of ethics and moral responsibilities, it might not be jaiz for you. It might not be halal for you, because you have a position. You are someone representing Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib. Therefore, you cannot attend a gathering where there is alcohol being served, where there is nuisance being created, where there is people are indulging in haram activities. Therefore, to my youth here, they usually ask this question. Yes, concluding, you can greet, you can wish them Happy New Year, or you can wish them Merry Christmas, or you can wish them. You might also be able to celebrate it, but keeping in mind that you do not confirm their faith with your actions, and you do not support them with your actions, and it is not considered as supporting their faith and religion. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the tawfiq to imitate in the footsteps and the seerah of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salatu wassalam. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hasten the reappearance of the Imam of our time. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على سيدنا ونبينا وشفيع المذنبين أبي القاسم مصطفى محمد. وصل على أمير المؤمنين يعصوب الدين أمير المؤمنين علي بن أبي طالب. وصل على فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين. وصل على الحسن والحسين سيدي شباب أهل الجنة. وعلي بن الحسين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. ومحمد بن علي. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. وجعفر بن محمد. اللهم صل على محمد. وموسى بن جعفر. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. وعلي بن موسى. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. ومحمد بن علي. اللهم صل على محمد. وعلي بن محمد. والحسن بن علي. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. والحجة بن الحسن القائم المنتظر المهدي عجل الله تعالى فرجه الشريف. اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات الأحياء منهم والأموات. تابع بيننا وبينهم بالخيرات إنك مجيب الدعوات إنك على كل شيء قدير. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر.